G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be specifically checking out the 5-star legendary green hero, Richter, the heavyweight basher. Now, Richter is available for summons from the Raiders of the Wasteland Challenge Event portal, which comes around once every 16 weeks. It's on a 4-weekly time slot in the calendar of events, but it does rotate with 3 other challenge events. So we got 4 events, 4 weekly occurrence, so every 16 or so weeks we get the Raiders one. Richter is a fairly recent addition to the PuzzleCombat in the scheme of things. He came in July 2022, which seems like a long time ago, but it was 2 years after the Raiders Challenge Event was initially added to SGG. It was part of an expansion that SGG did to the Challenge Event portals at the time, where they added a couple new heroes into each of the different portals. The Raiders portal was then expanded one additional time in June 2023, when Inferno was added to the game as well. The portal odds themselves, we can take a quick look at those. So we can see that there is a 1% chance for a featured event hero and a 0.6% chance for an unfeatured event hero. So to put that into a bit of perspective, if you were to go and do 100 summons in this portal, you would have, across those 100 summons, an 80.0% probability of getting any of the event 5-star heroes, but you would have a 63.4% probability of getting a featured one and a 45.2% chance of getting an unfeatured hero. If we drill down onto the specific hero level, you would have a 39.4% probability of getting a specific featured hero and just a 13.9% probability of getting a specific unfeatured hero. And notably, that last number will drop if any additional heroes get added into the event. Let's duck across real quick and we can take a look at Richter's artwork. So here we can see Richter's heavyweight basher artwork. So it's a bit interesting. Obviously we got a giant stuff off hammer mace thing, which is obviously what we use for the bashing and the earthquake effect that we'll get to later on. He's kind of a bit of a beefy chunky dude, which obviously is necessary if you're going to create an earthquake simply by smashing the ground with your hammer. Bit interesting is like this rear vision mirror sort of thing going on off the side of his shoulder. I'm not really sure what the purpose of it is, particularly seeing as out of those welding masks, you have literally 0 peripheral vision. So the little, what's it called? The rear vision mirror is going to be of absolutely no use to him unless he physically turns his head to look at it. So I don't know. Anyway, that's his artwork. He's also got a tire wrapped around his midriff. I don't know if anyone noticed that before, but he's got a tire as a belt. So anyway, that's his artwork. Feel free to pause it if you wish, but it is a little bit interesting. I think his name, he is named for Charles Richter, I presume, and he is famous, as you may or may not be aware, for developing the Richter scale in conjunction with a mate named Benno Gutenberg. So they developed the method that we use even still to this day to measure earthquake strength, and they did that back in 1935. So a little bit of extra useless trivia for you, if anyone is so inclined to remembering fun little facts. Ducking back across, we can see Richter is a member of the Raiders family, which means that he is granted a 10% chance to trigger the Radiation Storm effect whenever he casts his special skill. The Radiation Storm will give 285 HP healing to all allies over 3 turns and a minus 198 poison damage to all enemies for 3 turns. We can also see there's a stat bonus giving plus 2, 4, 6 or 8% attack bonus when there are 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique Raiders family members in your battle. 2 things to note there. Number 1, the Radiation Storm is inherent to every Raiders hero. You do not need multiple heroes. You do not need unique heroes. You just need a Raiders hero, and that individual has a 10% chance to trigger the Radiation Storm. The stat bonus, however, it must be unique heroes, so it can't be 2 copies of Richter to trigger it. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like combining Richter with Perla or Richter with Coaster as 2 different examples. On the personal side of things, Richter comes in with 659 attack, 768 defense, and 1508 HP. So there is a little bit of a skew going on there. Most of it is going from his attack stat towards the defense and HP stats. Is ultimately where his scaling goes, or his skewing goes rather. So we can see the attack is down a little bit, and his defense and HP stats are a little bit increased. The other thing to point out is his power. He comes in with 710 power. This is much improved from the OG event heroes in this portal. They come in with 683 on Brock, Perla, and Coaster. So he is definitely improved on those guys, but he is reduced compared to some of the most recent heroes in the game. Like you've got Topaz, who comes in with 742, and Richter's at 710. So all the power is it's a representation of their total base stat distribution. So more power equals more stats. And that's what we call power creep in the game. Moving on from that, we can check out his charge speed. So his charge speed is set to 42, which is slow, and requires 12 tiles to charge, or 6 ghosted tiles. It's actually just a little bit off the speed break, which happens at 43. So you only need to give a +1 speed improvement, which you can do using the Relic Hunter Bargo. It's the only green speed gun in the game. That'll give you +6. Alternatively, you can just get the 2% charge generation node that sits at +19 on his class tree. The double speed break needs to get all the way up to speed 50, which is a +8 improvement. Unfortunately for us, green only has the 1 speed gun, and that is the +6. So even if you were to combine the Relic Hunter Bargo with the 2% charge generation node from his emblem tree, you do fall short. You cannot speed break Richter from 12 tiles down to 10. The best you can get is 9 tiles. So the class node is kind of relevant if you want to speed break him but don't want to use a Relic Hunter Bargo, or you've got a different weapon available, then yeah, grab the +19, but otherwise you don't really need it if you're going to just equip him with a Relic Hunter Bargo and get that speed break in that fashion. His class itself, Richter is a member of the Warfighter class, which grants him the chance to revive with 1 HP after taking what would normally be fatal damage. The Warfighter talent is quite game-changing. It can turn the tide of a battle just with the 1 revive. It is also a bit of a weird history. It has been admitted by SGG to have been bugged in the past, and it remains to this day to be a conspiracy theory that it is still bugged. Whether that is the case or not, I will let you determine. I'm not going to weigh in on that discussion. Personally. Generally speaking, I advise putting +1 on most Warfighter class heroes just because it activates the chance for revival. So without it, you've got a 0% chance. With it, you've at least got a chance to revive and have them charge their skill 1 more time. If we are going to talk an emblem path, let's jump across and we can check out a Warfighter class hero. You can make an argument to go either way. Honestly, you could go on an attack path to increase his damage output, but you could also very much go a defense HP route to increase his overall survival. So personally, I would go the survival route. So I'd go the defense and HP to increase his survival, but you can go either way. So I'll show you both paths just now. So forget the fact that this is Quake, it is now Richter for this demonstration. So what the defense HP path looks like is we are going to pick up the nodes which have got defense and HP on them. So the whole way down we are following a path that looks something like that. The +19 node, as we said, is relevant for Richter, so you can definitely pick up that 19 node if you so choose and want it, but otherwise you can leave it alone and you will be just as fine as well. So that's the defense and HP path. That's the path that I personally would recommend going. If you were to go the attacking path, it kind of looks similar but a little bit opposite in some spots. So we're still going to pick up defense as our secondary priority, but we are going to go attack at each of the preferences. Notably, no change there because that HP, that healing node is absolutely garbage. So we are still very much following a similar path to what we see on the attacking side of things. The only real differences is the branch here and the branch here and this branch here. Otherwise, we are still pretty well following the same path. It's a 50-50 whether it's the same or different. So yeah, that's the path for Richter that I would recommend following if you are going to go the attacking route. But personally, I'd go the defense path because I just find it to be better attuned to him as a hero. He's not a big damage dealer, so it's not what he's known for in his direct damage. So anyway, pause it if you wish or rewind as the case may be, but otherwise let's jump back across and we can take a look at his special skill. So his special skill is titled Ground Pounder, and at level 10 skill and 42 charge speed it will deal 310% damage to the target, with minor damage being dealt to nearby enemies. The damage is increased by 50%, or deals an additional 50% damage rather to enemies with armor. It will then add 300 armor to the caster, and then finally apply the Earthquake ailment to the target enemy for 3 turns. The Earthquake ailment will deal 100 damage with a 15% chance to miss on the first turn, 200 damage with a 30% chance to miss on the second turn, and a 400 damage to all enemies at a 50% miss rate on the third turn. So basically, each turn the Earthquake will deal twice as much damage with more of a miss chance to more enemies, is essentially how it works. So Before we jump into the parts of this skill, I just want to start off with the minor damage phrasing. So minor damage is literally what it is it is 1/2 of the listed percentage on their special skill. So in the case of Richter, he normally would be dealing 310% damage to the target. So the nearby enemies who receive minor damage, they're going to get half that. So 155% damage to the nearby enemies. Because of how the damage calculation works, it doesn't end up being 50% damage. It actually ends up being a little bit less than that. So the nearby enemies roughly end up taking 42% of the damage that would be dealt to the primary target. So because of this substantial drop-off in the damage, I tend to just classify minor damage heroes as splash damage and then just compare them to snipers. So if you see on my comparison charts for snipers a hero that says plus splash damage, that's what these heroes are. They're one of those ones. So with that in mind, let's take a bit of a detailed look at that damage component. So damage, as always, easy enough to calculate, very, very lot of variety and variability that goes into that calculation due to RNG and other factors. So for simplicity's sake, I calculate heroes' attack power and compare them based on that, which is analogous to their final damage output in the end of the day. So attack power is just a hero's attack stat, 659, multiplied by the percentage in their special skill. And we can see on Richter, he comes out with a speed normalized value of 170 attack power per tile, which ain't great, right? It's number 12 of the 13 snipers in green, and green does have some of the worst snipers available in the game. So if we were to look at all of the elements, Richter comes in at just 79 of the 86 snipers across all the 5-star options. So it's really not a great damage dealer, Richter. Yes, he's got the splash damage, so yes, he is dealing some minor damage to the nearby enemies, but still, the primary focus of his damage, compared to a lot of other options, is quite poor, like very poor. And there's no real way around it. So if we do see him hitting an armored enemy, it does jump up a bit, so we can see him climbing to 198 attack power per tile. This does, however, only apply to the enemies that actually have armor on them. So if the nearby enemy has armor, they get half of the increase. So the target would get 50% additional damage, nearby would get half that. So they only get 25% additional damage, which is added into the skill. So instead of it being 155%, they would do 180% damage to the nearby enemies, which it still isn't much. Like, we're talking roughly half that attack power, essentially. So instead of it being 2372, it would be 1680 something, 86, something like that, which is not very much. It's worse than the damage that Walker deals to his primary target. So yeah, as I mentioned, generally speaking, green actually has quite poor sniping options. If we look at Fiddle there, Fiddle's the best option in terms of the base damage output with 291. Fiddle actually comes in at 24 of the 86 options. So the best green damage dealer is 24th in line in the snipers, which means across the other 4 elements, there are 23 options that are better than her. So before green even gets a look in, we have got effectively 6 heroes in each of the other elements that are dealing more direct damage, more sniping power than green does. And Richter is a long way down that list. So yeah, green not really known for its snipers at the end of the day. And Richter does not improve that reputation either. So moving on from the damage, because we've kind of seen that he's quite poor in his direct damage, we can see that the next thing that he does is he adds 300 armor for the caster. Obviously, instant armor, that's great. It comes out as being 20% of Richter's base HP stat, which is pretty good. It is not health, so it's not direct healing or anything like that. So it means that, yes, it chips, or it preferentially takes damage before it hits his health bar, but it doesn't move him out of the range of some effects that are HP based. So you've got heroes like Cooper that do additional damage when heroes are at low HP, but you've also got heroes like Dark Skull that trigger DOT when the hero has low HP. So yes, he gets additional effective HP via the pseudo healing, but it's not health, so it doesn't push him out of the way for that. There's not a lot else to say, really. I find it a little bit disappointing that there's no effect to any of his allies. This is kind of really the opportunity for him to have done it. If you look at some of the other heroes that generate healing or whatever at the same speed, you've got heroes like Jocasta and El Coyote. Both of them are giving 500 HP heal to all allies. Pulse does upwards of 600. Anastasia, who's a similar speed, a little bit slower. She's also kicking out huge amounts of health as well. So she comes out as being, 550? And admittedly, she is a little bit slow. She's 13 tiles to charge. But yes, those heroes, they are inherently, their primary focus is to be a healer and a support hero. But I still feel that because of how slow Richter is, I'd still think it would have been nice to see him doing armor for caster and nearby allies, just given how slow his speed actually is. Like, I don't think it would have really changed him into a groundbreaking, well, pun not intended, but a groundbreaking hero or anything like that. So, yeah, armor, caster only, not great at the end of the day. The final part of his skill is the Earthquake element, so the target gets Earthquake for 3 turns, which on the first turn at 15% accuracy, or minus 15% accuracy, so that's a 85% chance to hit, it will deal 100 damage to the target. On the second turn, it will deal 200 damage to the target and nearby enemies with a 70% chance to hit, and on the third turn, it will deal 400 damage to all enemies at a 50% chance to hit. So, it is an interesting effect. It is, in fact, a one-of-a-kind effect. There is no other hero that does anything like this in the game. To explain in layman's terms how this actually works out is basically at the end of each turn, it will deal more damage to a wider range of targets, but with a decreasing amount of accuracy. In a nutshell, that's what happens. The accuracy itself is calculated on an individual basis. So if we look at that final turn, there is a 50% accuracy check that is run on all enemies. So i.e. if there are 5 enemies still alive, it will do 5 checks, 1 check for each of them. So what this means is that you could have a situation where all 5 enemies get the 400 damage, or just as likely, we could have a situation where all 5 enemies get missed and no one gets any damage. So it could be a really powerful effect. And I'll get into a little bit of detail about what the net magnitudes are at the end, but I will also take a quick look at that tooltip, which basically says that the Earthquake has reduced accuracy each turn, we already know that, but also that the damage and duration are not affected by other special skills or effects. So what this means is that the duration cannot be increased or decreased by effects like heroes from Fungi Beats or Top Hog or anything like that. The accuracy also cannot be affected by weapon perks or buffs, but neither can the damage also be altered by turn-based modifiers, defense buffs, defense ailments, or anything else. Like, it is always, doesn't matter what you have going on in the rest of the fight, it will be the same amount of damage at the listed percentage every time. And then for the sake of explicitness as well, even though the damage is being done each turn, it is not classed as a turn-based damage effect. And I did test this by combining Richter with Whipster, and the damage was as listed in the skill, even though Whipster would give a 25 increase to turn-based damage effect. So it's not counted as turn-based damage. Final couple notes to make is, number one, obviously it's an ailment, which means that it can be cleansed, withstood, resisted, or reflected. In the case of it being reflected, it is put back onto Richter, which means that the damage will instead be dealt to your team. So you better hope for those misses if that's the case. The other thing that I would like to note is that it is a non-stackable buff, which means that you can only have one Earthquake ailment active on a target at any one time. But because it is ailment-based, not buff-based, what this means is that you can put the Earthquake ailment on 2 different heroes, and you can have 2 different instances of Earthquake triggering at the same turn, which is quite nice. The last thing, I said that was my final note, but the last thing I would like to highlight is the just to show the magnitude of this damage. So the damage itself, it is skill-based, linked. So at level 10 skill, it will do the 1 to 400 split, but at a lower skill level, say 2 out of 10, it's only going to do the 6, 120, and 240 damage. So it is still going up, doubling each turn, but overall, if you calculate all of that out, Richter can be doing up to 700 HP damage to the target and up to 600 damage to the nearby enemies. So it is quite a powerful effect if the hits actually land. So overall, I would say Richter is a bit of an interesting hero. I wouldn't say he's out and out a star hero or an amazing hero or anything like that, because his direct damage is quite poor, and his speed does not really help him out either, but both of that is bolstered by the fact that he's got that additional damage coming from the Earthquake effect. The fact that that Earthquake effect is wholly unique in how it operates is kind of cool. I do kind of like it. But the having the accuracy linked in there is kind of annoying. Because particularly what it means is that it's on a slow hero to start with, so you're not even guaranteed to get the ailment out before he dies because of how slow he is. But then on top of that, if you do get the ailment out, you then have the chance for the ailment to do literally 0 damage across all 3 turns. So it is kind of annoying if that situation does arise, but in the event that you do get the full amount of damage, as I said, Richter can do 700 damage to the target and 600 damage to nearby enemies. And that's on top of dealing roughly 300, 350 damage off his direct skill as well. So it can stack up to being quite a lot of damage if all of the hits land, and that is a big if at the end of the day. So for Richter's grading, factoring in the uniqueness and how much I think he would be a little bit fun to play with, I'm going to give him a B- for his War and Raid attack grade. That's sort of where I see him landing. There's not much else to say on it. For the War Machines, I'm going to drop him down to a D+. There's nothing in his skill that would make him a War Machine hero. The Eventings, I'm going to bump him a tiny bit to a C-, and that's just because he's got that turn-based damage, or effectively that turn-based damage that you can kick out as well. On the defense side of things, I would say that he's probably best suited to the flank position. Possibly could be workable at a tank because of his stats, but his speed does mean that he would probably be better suited to the flank where he can hide a little bit more. So I'm going to give him a C+ for War and Raid defense applications. In our Bloody Battles, I'm going to keep him at a B- and a C+. Yes, he does lose the self-armor buff, but generally there are less cleansers in these things, so he's more likely to have the Earthquake ailment proc to its full extent. And that's because most cleansers are on healers, and the rule set does negatively impact on bringing healers to those fights. So a B- on Bloody Battle attack and a C+ for Bloody Battle defense. On the buff booster side of things, there is nothing in his skill which is buff related, so I'm going to drop him down to a C+ for attack and a C grade for defense. And finally, for the charge attack, he does get a sizable speed improvement, right? He goes from 42 slow up to 65 fast. So I'm going to give him a B+ for charge tournament attack and a B- for charge tournament defense. So overall, that comes out as being a C+ for his overall attack grade and a C+ for his overall defense grade. And that concludes the content for this review of Richter. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback, so please do drop down to the comments section, leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did enjoy the content of this video and found it to be useful, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel and all of that, but definitely also share it around, because chances are, if this is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!